All right. Okay. Welcome to the Moon Underwater, the Moo. And I'm Kelly Daniels.
And I'm Steve Jones.
And today we're going to slowly lower the intro music, which is called Mr. Mischief by somebody who I will name eventually. Can't remember who it is. I got it on a free podcast music thing. So thank you to that site and this musician.
Nice.
And like I said, I'll put the name on there eventually so he can get some credit. Today we are going to discuss, well, last time we discussed team sports that we watch, right?
Yep.
And it's a good bar thing to do, sit around, watch NFL, whatever you like, maybe a little fantasy, getting upset about your team losing, feeling like you have accomplished something because your team won. Today is Sunday. Football will be played a little later. And yesterday was all the college games. That was kind of exciting. He doesn't want to talk about it. Iowa predictably lost to a juggernaut of Michigan.
Yeah.
And I didn't think they looked terrible, but...
putting any points on the board would have been nice.
That would have been nice, but also, yeah.
Pretty typical.
It seemed like what this team is, good defense, and just not much offense. So we're not going to talk about that today, though. So, but today we're going to talk about endurance sports that we actually participate in or do and that we don't really watch on TV. And you're a runner.
Yeah.
You ran this morning, even though it was snowing, and you've been injured.
Yeah.
And I'm into cycling. And both of those are, you can get obsessed with it. Mm-hmm. And they're deeply satisfying on some level, but they pretty much always involve a kind of misery. And at some point...
Oh, yeah. Most of the points.
Yeah. And it people always ask me when I do, especially like a really hot ride of, 80, 90, 100 miles and just grinding through, and then you stop at a Quick Mart or whatever to get a Gatorade, and the people are, what are you doing? Like, why, it's like 90 degrees out, and why, is somebody paying you for this? No. Why? You don't look like you're having fun, and yet I keep coming back for more. Yeah. So there's a hurt so good quality to it. And so I wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit, our sports, and tell any war stories we may have. But really, in a broader sense, think about what is it that draws humans to do things that are unpleasant, kind of objectively painful. And what is that? What is there some evolutionary need to do it? Is it societal? Is it? I don't know what it is. But
I had the word arduous written down as like a thought of, like some of these things are, why are we doing this? It seems like a really arduous thing to do, to go out and, run a marathon, to go out and ride a century. Like, these are things that, man, I don't think anybody would really think was, fun but there's something about it that does keep us coming back.
And yet, when you look at a marathon, there's thousands of people running it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not just the two of us. That'd be cool if we were the only ones that were like this. We'd be like, wow, we're special. We're tougher than everybody else. But in fact, we're not. We're probably not as tough as a lot of people. But I don't know. First off, I know you have some things to say on the subject.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about some? What's your longest run? How about that? Or maybe your hardest run?
Yeah. So I'm going to go with. I did a half marathon a few years ago. We got a local race here that goes up and down some of the hills in one of the downtown areas.
The Big Seven, right?
Bix, yeah. And it's kind of famous. Nationally, we've had some Olympic runners come in and. I ran that one year, and I got to the end, and I thought, I could do that again. But something kind of hurt in my hip.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's kind of weird. Like, I'm going to keep training, and the marathon's coming up in September. I'll sign up. But I got to get this hip thing taken care of. I'll just take a couple weeks off. And a couple weeks turned into a couple months. And so late July for the Bix. And then September rolled around, and all of a sudden, hey, I feel kind of good. Like it's a couple weeks before the half marathon. I've run 7 miles once this year, a couple times. And I thought, okay, I got 3 weeks to get ready. I'm going to go run 9 miles this weekend and see if I can do it. And I did. I was like, okay, everything felt fine. I didn't hurt. The following weekend, I ran 13.2 miles to make sure I could do it. I did it without having any water with me. I had to ask for water from a host. It was very poorly planned. Like all of it was.
Who did you ask for water from?
Somebody in a little town north of where I live. And they had a hose, and it was like the rustiest, most horrible water I've ever tasted in my entire life. But man, it was good.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the key right there. Is that things that we normally hate are pleasurable. Yeah. When we torture ourselves enough.
I would have taken anything. I mean, I could have had water out of a puddle at that point.
Yeah.
And then I did run the half marathon. I finished in just under 2 hours and 10 minutes. And
is that good?
For not having trained, it was great. And then I spent 6 months recovering from that. Physical therapy. Yeah. I was hurt everywhere. That was a really bad idea.
You need to get some, injections of just painkiller, just right before the run. Just
along the way would have been great.
Yeah. Just shoot it right into that hip,
right.
And it'll just be torn up, but you can't feel it, so it's fine.
Yeah, it would have been good, better than what I did.
Yeah,
so I'm trying to be better about my training this time. So,
well, ibuprofen becomes your friend if you do these kinds of sports. It seems like
naproxen for me. Naproxen's the good one. So 500 milligrams of that goes a long way.
Yeah, it does seem like running has a lot of these kinds of injuries, whereas cycling, I know different people get different injuries, and I know friends who have gotten numb hands that.
Oh, sure.
And then their hands are still numb weeks later. It's nerve damage.
Carpal tunnel or something like that.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But mainly it's if you haven't been riding a lot, your butt hurts.
Yeah. Back burn? Your back kind of hurts?
Yeah, that's the worst for me, is especially I have a bunch of bikes, but...
you do have a nice collection.
One of them is my little carbon road bike, and you're kind of really bent down. So it's like a racing bike. And that one, I get the pain in the upper shoulder, neck area, and it becomes excruciating. That last, on a century ride, 100-mile ride, the last 10 miles, it's just really painful and not fun either.
No.
And I'm not sure. I'm not into the torture so much that I need to go 100 miles. Actually, I like a good 60, 70-mile ride. To me, isn't really that hard if I've trained.
Yeah.
And anyway, we can get into the details of how I do my rides, which are not these incredible athletic feats.
What's your longest ride?
I don't know, a little bit, 120 miles or something like that.
Mine's 40 on a road bike.
Yeah.
And
That's lame, dude.
Yeah. No, I was like, I feel okay. I got done, and it had felt like, I don't know, probably, like a 8 or 9 mile run.
Yeah.
But I felt good, and my joints didn't hurt. The problem is the amount of time that it took me to get to that was and it took 40 miles takes a bit.
Yeah.
So it was the time commitment on the bike. I do like riding.
So what, 2.5 hours or something like that?
I think it was 3 with the stop.
3 hours, yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, doing these long rides, it's an all day. I'm just going to clock in, and I like to stop. So for me, it's just the way I like to ride is those road bike rides. I don't even break out the road bike that much anymore. I mostly ride on my touring bike, and that's what I like. It's more comfortable. It's got those drop handlebars, but it's more of an upright sort of geometry. And it's a big heavy steel bike with racks. And then, and I love doing multi-day rides. And I haven't done the epic coast to coast, anything like that. I've done a week or so. And camping out on the side of the road, wherever.
Oh man!
And stopping and hit a brewery. You got to stop and get a couple beers, and it mixes a lot of different interests of mine.
That's a fun part about riding bikes, right? Is the stops, right? There's a little place out here, Argo Corners, that we used to go ride out to, and go and sit outside and middle of the summer and grab beers, and we'd ride our fat tire bikes out there and just go hang out, have a few beers, and ride back.
Yeah, Argo Corner is weird. It's just the middle of the nowhere cornfields.
It is,
and it's like a little convenience store or general store that also has a grill and also has a bar.
It's great.
And it's pretty legendary. So what I was saying before about cycling was I find there's some aches and pains, but I don't get that kind of knee injuries, like these repetitive knee injuries. It just feels like it's easier on the body. And you see a lot older people riding bikes, like long distance. So to me, it's a little more sustainable, I suppose. I've run a little bit here and there in my life, but I just have not gotten the joy of it.
Yeah.
And so what is it? Is it that you get that runner's high? What is the pleasure?
Yeah. I think that for me, it's about getting out from my house, because I like to run from home or from somewhere. I will not run indoors.
From nowhere?
Yeah. Or on a treadmill, right? Like I want to go from a starting point and go.
Yeah.
And part of it is, like getting, 4 or 5 miles away from home and being like, okay, smart guy, you got yourself out here.
Yeah.
Time to come back.
Yeah.
And there's something...
Or not. You could just keep running.
Yeah, just keep going. Yeah. I mean, I used to run with my phone because I would get worried that, what if I got however far out and something happened.
Yeah.
And I know people that it's happened to. But the more that I ran, the more I was like, okay, I got this.
Yeah.
And I don't really worry about it. I like to hit the road and go. But the runner's high, I ran today just under 3 miles, and that's not enough. It was enough to get warmed up. I really could have used a 4th or a 5th, but I'm in physical therapy for an injury in my quad, which is why one of the reasons we're recording at the bar we're at. They have low tables, and the high tops really it pulls on the quad, so it hurts.
Nice.
Yeah. Yep. So we're
so
doing
this is an
year.
Accommodation that we got here.
Yeah, this is perfect for that. And so there's something maybe a little primal about all of that, though. Just the getting out and away, and at a certain point, you just everything just goes numb, and you feel like you could run all day, and that's sort of a problem because that's when you hurt yourself.
Oh well, I guess so. There was some guy, I didn't read the book, but I think I heard him on NPR or something way back when, but he wrote some book. He was a runner and also something of a scholar or a scientist, but he made the case that humans were evolved to actually run down prey.
Yeah.
That we're a running species, and that because we're the only ones that can cool our bodies with sweat, and even though we're not very fast compared to these other animals, we could just keep going in ways that you can actually... And I think that's a disputed idea that we actually were chasing down deer and stuff. I think some other
biology chasing deer down, right? But we could surround it. There's other things we could have done.
I think that we made fires and then chased animals off of cliffs and then went to the bottom of the cliff, and so
that checks out.
Yeah, I think that's... I read somewhere that there's a lot of archaeological evidence that all these big animals that used to roam the planet in Australia and the Americas and stuff were around until prehistoric humans started just extincting them all mainly by chasing them off of cliffs. And so
when you're hungry,
good job,
right?
Good job, go humans, go humans. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so when you're getting yourself ready to go back to when you're talking about long distance, even 70 miles, at what point when you, in your past, was it 70? That's fine, I can do 70 miles. Because there's people that are going to listen to this and go, 70 miles? So like how do you get there? Like, do you start on a 10-mile ride? Do you what's that look like?
Yeah. Okay. I was just like a bike rider guy in the city when I lived in Atlanta.
Okay.
And at one point, I didn't want to buy a car. I was a graduate student, and I thought, I can be. They don't have like great public transport like European cities or anything, but Atlanta has a metro.
MARTA, right?
MARTA, yeah. And I just mainly stayed in my neighborhood, went to the university. Sure. But then a bicycle became, and I could park the bike at the MARTA station and just ride it. So I became just sort of a riding around town guy, and I had this bike that I bought at a thrift store.
Nice.
It was a old 1970s, maybe Schwinn Breeze.
Nice.
It was sort of like bright yellow with these built-in baskets in the back.
Nice.
Super heavy and clunky. And I rode it around. I also went to the grocery store with it and filled up those little baskets. And
did it have a bell?
I probably did. I don't. It's been a while. But then you become known as the guy with that bike.
Yeah.
And people, like strangers, will come up to you at the bar, like, "Oh, I saw your bike parked out here, and saw you riding by the other day." So here's what happened one day. I came home from school.
Yeah.
And I would take the MARTA for a few stops, and hopped on my bike and rode to this little apartment. And this is the era of landlines, if you can think back that far.
Oh, yeah.
And the phone was ringing as I walked in. I answered the phone, and I hear this voice that goes, "Hey, I've been watching you, little bicycle boy. What do you..." And they're like, "Riding your little bicycle out, see?" Like, and just going on, and I freaked out and hung up.
Oh, no.
And then the phone rang again, and then I realized, and I answered. It was a buddy of mine, saw me riding by and just was fucking with me. But he did it with a voice, and it's still, to this day, we don't talk that often, but, when we do, he'll always call me Bicycle Boy at some point. I'm sorry, this is an aside, but the same guy did one of these where you prank the scam phone caller.
Oh, yeah.
And then record it.
Those are great.
And somebody called he had a business. It was an advertising agency business. And he answers, and it was this toner thing. You need to order more toner.
Yeah.
Your boss told us that you need to, it's that kind of scam.
Right.
And so this is probably pretty un-PC nowadays, but he did an Indian voice, like an Apu voice, and he's like, "Oh no, thank God, my boss will kill me." And he just went for it, and he strung this guy along for like a half an hour.
Yeah.
And then he finally just kept getting weirder and weirder to see when the scammer would figure it out.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how he loves the toner. He likes to put it on his Vindaloo. That's just like pretty, maybe like not the most sensitive in terms of identity, but
he went with it.
It was funny, and then finally the guy hung up on him, and then called back a second ago. That was pretty good, and then hung up again.
Oh, so at least he appreciated it. Yeah,
gave him some love.
Have you ever done that? You ever scammed the scammer?
I haven't. Have I ever done any... I don't think I even did phone crank calls. Maybe I did, but I don't remember it. How about you?
I've done all the above. Yeah.
Yeah?
The Scam the Scammer was my favorite. My mom and I were driving far. We had 3-4 hours in the car, which is also on my list, by the way. So
driving long distance?
Driving long distance, one of my favorite.
Miserable.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
And
we're driving, and my phone rings, and it's like some 800 number. I'd seen some people who had done this on YouTube, and I'm like, well, I'll answer the phone. I'm bored.
Nice.
So I put it on speaker, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we have a virus. We're from Microsoft. We've detected a virus on your computer. We need you to go to your computer." "Oh, which computer?" "Well, I don't know which one." And I kept them going.
Nice.
For 20, 30 minutes. They're having me type stuff into, to make stuff run. And I work in tech, but I didn't tell them that. I just acted like I was, anybody and just kept them going. And eventually I've done it a couple times, but that one was, I asked them if they wanted me to use my FBI computer or my personal computer, and then they hung up. Other times I've kept them going and then said, wait, you said Windows? I have an Apple computer. And the guy goes, you have Apple? I have Orange. And he hung up. But, so there's a few of them. And then, as a kid, definitely, dialing random phone numbers and, back before caller ID and everybody knew how to *69 somebody to call them back. And, yeah. So,
did you ever hear of somebody called the Jerky Boys?
Of course.
Yeah. That was pretty good.
They were great. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember any good. There was something about getting diarrhea from these fava beans, goddamn fava beans.
They did a movie.
The restaurant, it's some vegan restaurant way back before that was a known thing. He's like, oh, we don't have fava beans. Oh, it was the goddamn fava beans. I got the run still, or something like that. And
that was like peak of comedy in the 90s,
it was pretty good.
On a CD or on a tape.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah.
The good old days.
Yeah.
Back when things were funny.
Albums. Yeah, exactly. Oh, man. And people could have fun.
People were, the fun haters were kind of beaten down where they should be. And now they've come up and taken over the world, the fun haters.
Well, I've got something that I hate that I think is not fun. And I think it's arduous. And there are some people that love it.
What is it?
Yard work.
Yeah, you hate it.
I absolutely despise doing
Other
yard
people
work.
like it.
People love to do it. I want, bare minimum. I don't even do my own yard work anymore. I have a buddy, and shout out to him, Mikey, who does Mikey Green, as we call him, does our yard, and we get a great deal on it, and I'm thrilled because I don't have to touch the lawnmower.
Is Mikey financially supporting this podcast? I feel like if we're going to advertise, then if you why buy the what is it? Why buy the cow if you can get the milk for free?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Mikey, good job, Mikey.
He's got two houses, right? So he's got my mom's house too, because she's not doing it.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I wanted nothing more than to mow the lawn, and my dad wouldn't let me do it because growing up, he had been forced to do yard work. He grew up on a farm, and he hated what he called agriculture, which included cutting the yard for him. Like mowing the grass was agriculture. Yeah,
I'm not some goddamn ag worker.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm not a farm. I got away from the farm on purpose. Like, I don't want to do any of this. And one of the big reasons was, as a kid, he had gotten a tendon in his leg cut when he was down choking the lawnmower for his dad, and they didn't know if he was gonna be able to walk. And so he had a big scar over his knee. And so he was like, this is the reason you can't mow the lawn. Man, I wanted nothing more to get on that rider. As a car guy now, it meant a lot to be able to get on that riding mower and drive it around the yard. We had a hill. He was sure I was going to roll it over on myself. I was allowed to mow the lawn, I think, when I was in 4th grade. And then it was like, no more. And then when we moved to our first house, I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to love it. And I was really picky about it. And then we had our first kid, and it was like, this is a total waste of time.
Yeah. No, I don't mow my own lawn anymore.
Okay.
I also just don't happen to have a shed at my house, and having one installed just seems expensive. We have a sloping lawn, and so I don't even have a place to put lawn equipment except for the garage, which takes up... Anyway.
Are you picky with how it looks?
I hired a guy.
Are you picky with,
Nah.
I'm not either.
Totally don't. In fact, I would rather it just be clover and stuff, and then maybe chop it down, or get one of those just non-mowing ground cover lawns.
Yeah.
I would love that, but that also takes a ton of work to get there.
Yeah.
And lawns is its own whole thing, right?
Yeah.
How bad they are for the environment and all that kind of stuff. But if you have a kid who likes to play ball and stuff, you there's just letting it go is not a good answer.
It's not.
And then the alternatives, they're hard work. It's not like you just so
exactly. Yeah. There's no in between really. Well, there is, and
I like those Arizona, just some dirt and some rocks and some cactus. Fuck
pebbles in the pebbles in the front yard. That's it.
That's what I want.
That's the yard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and no snow to shovel. Ever, right? So for me,
how about leaves?
I'd leave them now. I don't care.
Yeah,
I'm out.
But you don't have that. You don't have feet of dead leaves on
the front's probably not great. I live in kind of a new neighborhood, and so we do have a maple in the front that, given
they're
the
not
wind,
super old trees, though, right?
No,
they're kind of,
but given the wind, those leaves all end up in my neighbor's yard.
Nice.
So it's like, oh, that
I'm
sucks.
at the top of the hill, and all the leaves I don't have a lot of big trees, but whatever leaves do end up in my yard, I just have to wait, and they will go downhill, and
you're getting rid of
not
them
my
somehow.
problem, man.
Yeah.
And
so with Mikey, he's very concerned with how it looks, and that I'm happy with it, and I don't want to tell him that. And I do
don't
tell
give a
him.
shit.
I'm like, yeah, it looks. I didn't do it, so it looks great.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people, and he's one of them. There's a lot of people that get a lot of joy in, working on something like that and making it look really good.
I think there's that kind of joy. But I think the gardening people I understand a little more.
Okay.
If I had a garden, if I was around in summers, which I'm not, but I would love to have a vegetable garden. But I want to pull that shit off and put it on my stove.
Oh, yeah.
I want to eat it.
Yeah.
Just for looks. I just can't get into that. But
I know a guy that did it, and they were mostly feeding themselves. They had chickens, and they had a garden that was huge.
Hey, man, as soon as the apocalypse happens, we're going to have to do that.
Yeah, I'm moving in with him when that happens.
Yeah. And, around here, oh, boy, you get into that conversation around here. It's how many guns do you have?
Right.
They'll just come and take your shit. But at some point, somebody's going to have a garden. I think that guns and gardens is going to be that's going to be the new government in this part of the country once it all goes down.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Anyway, this took a dark turn.
Yeah.
So I wanted to tell about this bike ride that I do. I know you know what it is. It's RAGBRAI. It's called. So the state of Iowa, there's this for 50 years. There's this bicycle ride where they start on the western edge of Iowa and they ride to the eastern edge of it, and it takes 7 days. And it's in July, so it's very hot. And it's just large. There's 20,000 riders.
Yeah.
And this huge, at first you think, oh, bicycle riding, it's so good for the environment. This thing is there's hundreds of semi-trucks traveling around.
Yeah.
RVs, buses to support these good environmental bicycle riders. But it's this traveling carnival, essentially, with bike riding. And it's just really a fun thing. The reason why I did it is because I happen to live in Iowa. And the first year I heard about it, it was ending in Davenport. And so a friend of mine, you were asking me how I got from 10 miles to riding 70.
Did you do the last day?
So I started just riding around town, and then started riding around, becoming I'm the guy that rides a bike around, and then I kind of leaned into it, and then I would do some recreational rides, and then the rides just started getting longer and longer. A lot of times in those days it was just bar hopping bike rides.
Yeah.
And so maybe I would have 30 miles, but after a full day of alcoholic excess, just drinking from place to place. And then we'd find new places to ride.
And there's lots of little places to stop, right? Like we're saying Argo Corners before, shout
outside
out to
of town. It's a destination.
Yeah.
And then finally, I was hanging out with this guy named Aaron Baker, poet. He was a colleague of mine, and he would ride bikes with us, but he's just sort of a more competitive type of guy, and he did half marathons and stuff. And so he starts Googling and looking up bicycle riding, and he just is like, oh, I want to get into this. So he's a competitive bike rider now.
Wow.
So he really, our little friend group where we rode bikes, he started showing up with a road bike with clipped-in pedals and all that gear.
Oh, yeah.
And he's beating us, extending our rides, but also riding faster than us and making us feel emasculated. So we need to keep up. And then he told us we should do RAGBRAI because it's ending in Davenport. And then we're like, wow. So we started training, and we overtrained like crazy. We were scared of it. So we were riding, many miles per week, a good like 100, 200 miles per week of just constant riding. Every chance we got, we would do these 30-mile rides. And then we finally got to Ragbri, and it was actually pretty easy, especially since every 10 or 15 miles you stop.
There's a lot of people that don't ride at all, except for
they just take buses.
Yeah, but people just kind of show up and they'll do a day or whatever. I mean,
they do a day, yeah.
But yeah.
So, yeah, Ragbri is. It also there are people who go and they have like a bus with them, and they'll just ride with the bus the whole time, and maybe they'll do like one little 15-mile segment.
Yeah.
But it's just a party.
Yeah.
But I've always rode it, and I've always done the whole week, and not always. There was one I only did 3 days.
How many years have you done?
I think like 7 or 8.
And how many miles total is it? I mean, I know it depends on the route.
It was 500 last time because it was their 50th anniversary, so they like numbers. So they made it artificially bumped up. Usually it's about 475 or 450. So it's about 500, but also if you think about it, it's in 7 days, so Iowa is not as flat as you think when you're on a bike.
Western Iowa, there's some parts, too, that I would not want to be on a bike riding over.
Yeah, there's the northern Iowa has that driftless area. I think there's a lot of, like, these river valleys that you go up and down. There's some place called Tornado Hill, which I think the movie Tornado
sounds like an Iowa place, right?
Yeah, but it was really it is quite a hill. You go down into this like really deep river ravine kind of thing, and then you have to ride up. I was
gonna say the down's the fun part, right? It's the ride back up.
Yeah, the down can be the bad part too, though. People at this ride, there's like so many bicyclists that somebody crashes and then everybody crashes, and so you're going like 45 miles an hour downhill. You're in this like skinny little bike, starts shaking and you start thinking, did I apply the bolt on the front tire all the way? I'm not sure if and
you trust the person that did the work if it wasn't you.
So but this last time I did it's self-contained, as they call it, and so I rode my touring bike and had all my gear with me, and I didn't even register for Ragbri because they weren't offering me anything. They weren't carrying my stuff. They weren't.
That's great.
They were offering me something. But I was going off route. But I had this crew of people, these Quad City touring bike. They call them baggers. So the baggers of Quad Cities. We were cruising around. It was so fun. It was the best one I've ever done, and I trained for it a fair amount. And they have like a
lot of weight, right? A lot of extra weight.
Everybody asked me as I was riding by, hey, how much does that weigh? And I didn't even think to weigh it, but it's probably 75 pounds plus whatever the bike weighs.
Yeah.
But what was really deeply, deeply satisfying, and it's one of those things where I start getting stronger toward the end than the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Even though you get kind of grinded down, there were like 2 different dangerous heat index days, and it got gnarly a few times, and but you all right there?
I'll make
a little down the beer down the round pipe. But these guys, they all have little like 9-pack ice chests on their bikes.
Oh my God.
So I kind of had one of those. I installed one of those, and it's on this. Anyway, I want to talk about that, but I won't, because it's one of those nerdy things where I screwed on this like clip onto the bike rack thing with this like cooler that I had. But anyway,
what was in the cooler?
Beer.
Exactly. That's what
beer
makes it
and
cool.
Ice. So you put ice and beer in it, and then you're riding, and instead of like having to wait till you get to a bar or something, you just there's a lot of stopping on bridges. Like when you're off and there's like a nice bridge and there's this nice looking river.
Okay.
Like if you get anyway.
I guess the route's closed, right? I mean, they closed it off to traffic.
They do, but also we were going off route onto bike paths and stuff, and taking little offshoots and stuff, including, what is that place called? It's a High Trestle Trail. Have you heard of that?
No.
It's this amazing bike and walking and running path. Goes really high up in gosh, I guess it's kind of northern central Iowa. And it's got these like trestle, these like beams that go over the trail that light up in neon lights at night. And so it's like, and they blink in some kind of way, so it's just,
that's cool.
People take mushrooms and go up there. And so we went through there at night and stopped with our little, our beers and stuff. But what I really loved was just feeling really strong and riding and just blowing by some people, with a 15-pound carbon bike and going uphill. And I've got this big steel bike with all kinds of luggage essentially all over it and just blowing past people. And you could feel their misery and just defeat.
Yeah.
And it just was, the more they were defeated, the stronger I got.
Or the daggers from their eyes, right?
I was just like sucking their energy and leaving back an empty husk in my dust.
That's kind of fun.
It was great.
Yeah.
So, that was part of it is that you could say you did it.
Yeah.
But it's not just that. It's, you go through the misery, and sometimes it feels good at the time, often it doesn't. But then when you stop, you feel like you deserve that beer more than you ever have.
Oh, for sure.
Or that hamburger. Like,
everything tastes a little better.
Yeah. Here's another little story. I hope I don't get tedious on this subject, but we had a really long day. And this guy, Aaron Baker, who I was talking about, he rented a hotel room in the middle of Ragbri. This is many years ago. And it was like far away from like the downtown part where the route went. So we had to get to the end of the route and then ride what turned out to be like another 10 miles through like suburban sprawl of just nasty bike riding, like not meant for bikes at all. Up and down hills the whole way. We finally get to like the Comfort Inn, and it turns out to be a nice Comfort Inn with like an extra big room.
Oh yeah.
And me and Aaron rented the room, and me and my buddy Sean just went along for the ride. So we get there, we stash our bikes in there, we take turns taking showers. We get this beautiful shower, and then we go out to a Chili's, and it's got to be, if not the best meal I've ever had.
It's the best Chili's on the planet.
It was so good. Yeah. It was like, we got there, we got these high tables, baseball was on TV, air conditioner was cranking. We're just getting frozen margaritas. Keep them coming.
Yep.
And then we got like the loaded potato skins, and that's not, we're burning like 4,000 calories a day. So it's like, we're not watching our waists at that point.
Right.
And it went on, and it was just so deeply satisfying. And the quality of the food was mediocre.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Never has a Chili's tasted so good, though. Right?
Or even a fancier restaurant.
Right.
I mean, it's just, there is something life-affirming, just grinding through something very difficult and unpleasant to get to a goal and then get a reward at the end of the goal. That's like the great story of every epic story is like that. The Lord of the Rings, it was really hard to like throw that ring in Mordor.
Yeah.
But when you're done, how stoked are you?
Yeah,
you're like,
good.
We saved the world.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Okay, so then going off of that, one of the things that we had on our list that I feel like we're kind of building to is the travel subject. And you kind of travel when we're talking Ragbri, right? You're going across the state. I think there's a lot that the state of Iowa has to offer that maybe people don't know about. Believe it or not, I've been out of the country, and
you're damning it with faint praise here, right?
It's amazing. I'm a transplant, and I love it. But I've been out of the country, and this was actually back in April. I was on a mountaintop in Wales, and there was a guy that was there. When he said, "Where in the States are you from?" And he was Dutch, and I said, "I'm Iowa, I guess." And he goes, "Ragbri." I'm going next year.
Nice.
I was like, "Wow, how do you know about it?" He goes, "Anybody who's ever been on a bike knows about Ragbri."
Woo! We're famous.
That's pretty cool.
We are famous.
So then, thinking about travel is, I don't associate it with one of those like, doing a 15-hour flight I think that's my longest flight, 15 and a half hours, Chicago to Shanghai.
Awful.
I would totally do it again. I mean,
were you in business class?
I was in first class.
Oh, you fucker.
Yeah.
Don't even talk to me about
bed. They put little sheets on it.
Don't even talk to me about suffering. You're just trying to.
It was great. It was 135,000 miles because I did not have the $15,000 to spend on the seat. And the peasants in business class behind me, those were like $9,000 seats. It was just me visiting a friend who'd moved there. So the family wasn't going, so I didn't have to have a zillion miles to do it.
So you used miles to get this wow.
Yeah.
Do they still give miles like that? I heard that the mile racket has kind of ended in a way.
It's not as good as it used to be. And part of it is, if you think about it used to be it's 35,000 miles for a domestic ticket, and you're getting $1 per mile that you spend. It's like, okay, well, things are getting more expensive, and I'm still getting those same dollars. Well, now eventually those miles have to inflate with money, and so it's now more expensive. I would do anything for if somebody told me that I could stand on my head in the corner for an hour and get 100 miles. I'd ask them how many times I could do it in order to continue to rack up the miles.
Okay, so you're a mile.
Yeah, because
mile guy.
I want to be able to go for nothing. Or very, you still have to pay a little bit, right?
So I have a rewards thing that I got for mile. It's like a travel rewards card, whatever. And I started using it, and you get triple points for travel related,
great.
Gas and restaurants and flights. And then I'm like, okay, we're going to use this for flights and stuff. But then it's like, once I get the reward payoff, travel doesn't give you any more than just getting the straight cash.
Right.
So I've just realized I just started just automatically having all those points just go into my mortgage because it's the same company that owns my mortgage. Okay. And it's just whatever. And I'll just buy my tickets because it's not actually gaining me anything to use those points. Is your thing different, or are you just psychologically you want to feel like it's free?
I am really, I'm a planner when it comes to travel. I don't plan a lot of stuff, but with travel, I book as early as I can if I'm going to use miles, 10 months in advance. I know where I'm going, right? Okay. So if we know that we're going to Spain for the summer, or for at least I'm going over for a little bit. I booked in July this year.
Do you ever get burned where you booked when it was more expensive and then it gets cheaper as it gets closer?
With miles, no, okay. Because I'm miles, okay. I know what I see numbers. So we fly in Iberia often. So there's a direct flight between Chicago and Madrid.
Yeah.
And they use Avios as their currency instead of miles, and it's British Airways, Iberia, a couple other companies that are all under one ownership group. And I think we're going one way for 20,000 Avios, which is equivalent of a mile, and back for 28. So for 48,000 miles, that's insane to be able to do a round trip. And so, but I also planned it almost a year in advance. And so, if you don't know where you're going to be, or you don't know that you're going to go and do this thing, then it's one of those okay, it's better to take the cash, apply it to the mortgage, whatever it is. But if you know that these are the dates, this is where we're going to go, then book it. So for me, the longest flight, not in first class on a 15 and a half hour whatever, right? I did Auckland to Los Angeles in coach. I was young.
Yeah.
Probably 19. But
that was miserable, I'm sure.
It was on January 31st, 1999. Or sorry, December 31st, 1999.
Oh, did you party like it was 1999?
We did. There was nobody on the flight.
Oh, wow.
And there was 67 people on a 747-400, and I'm a plane nerd. And that can hold upwards, over 300 people.
Nice.
And I had a row to myself in the back.
Of course you did.
Yeah, it was, I want to say it was 12 hours, something like that.
That's not bad.
It wasn't. It was not bad.
Were they just with free drinks flowing?
We waited for New Year's to roll over on the tarmac in Auckland, and they came around with champagne.
Nice.
And I looked like a child, but she was like, oh, okay, here. You had to be 18 to drink at that time there. So I had the champagne, and then I got a red wine when they brought dinner out, and she's like, are you 18? And I had been drinking in the terminal. Then I was like, I am 19. And I showed her my ID, my driver's license, which didn't serve for any sort of identification. She's like, okay.
Were you 19?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I fell asleep 2 hours into that flight. So it rolled over to New Year's. I fell asleep and passed out. And ended up waking up an hour outside of Los Angeles. And it was December 31st, 1999 again. So I had 2 rollovers. So, yeah, it's cool.
Well, it was also time travel.
It was.
You are a time traveler.
I am. I got to. I'm one of the few people I think that got to experience 2 Millennium New Year's.
Yeah.
The second one was worse than the first. They didn't have any flights to Chicago that afternoon, so I had a hotel room at the Sheraton at the airport.
So going back in time actually doesn't work as well as you think.
It does not.
Yeah, it's just worse each time.
Yeah, you're really bored. Yeah. Instantly.
So the more times you do it, it gets worse and worse, right. But then you're sort of sunk cost fallacy, and I get it.
Yep. So I mean that's kind of fun, but the long flights, I don't like. I mean, I want to be more comfortable than sitting in a coach seat for even 6 or 7 hours, but I have the mindset that when I go, it's like I'm going to be doing something for the next 10 hours anyway. I might as well be doing this, sitting here and going somewhere.
Yeah.
But that's not, then that's only that part of it, right? It's only this took 10 or 12 hours or whatever it is. Then once you get there, things never go as smoothly as you want them to, I think, on a trip. And for me, that's where I'm more frustrated than the flight or the drive. I was saying we do a lot of driving out to Colorado from here to ski because it's close and it's way cheaper than flying. But it's one of those things that once you get there, the things that go wrong really irritate me a lot more than the stuff along the way. Like I expect things to go wrong when I'm in transit.
No, I get you.
Bags aren't going to show up or whatever.
Yeah.
How about you?
Oh, well, I mean, I don't love, I like flying in that I like airports. I love just airports. As soon as you get into an airport, there's people. Yeah. It's one of the few places where a completely respectable person can just order a whiskey at 7 a.m. or whatever. It's just like it's a no judgment zone. You don't know my story,
right?
And
you don't know if I just got in, and it's 7 p.m. for me.
Yeah. And so it's and you just see all these different people and the fact that you're going somewhere that's exciting.
That's fun.
I don't mind sitting in an airplane. I think it can be pretty tedious and you can get pretty uncomfortable. And I get. Every now and then I'll get like a restless leg syndrome kind of thing. And I don't know, that has been going away lately. I haven't felt that in a while, but I've felt it traveling before, and that's kind of a drag. But I guess when I think of travel and this topic that we're having about suffering and loving it, is I'm a big backpacker, and I was a backpacker, not like hiking through the woods, but backpacker traveler. And that got me, I went to Europe when I was pretty young, when I was an undergrad. And instead of doing a study abroad thing, I just saved up some money and flew to London, and then with a ticket, I think 3 months later, I think the whole summer, I flew out of Paris and then just made my way around and was just trying to save money because I didn't have much money. And it's so long ago that we had, I showed up with a friend, but we split up pretty early because we both wanted our own thing, I guess.
Yeah.
But I would use traveler's checks. So that's ancient history.
Remember those? Yeah.
But there's definitely was no cell phones or anything, and you just had a paper guidebook and
different currencies everywhere.
Totally, and you have to go. The first thing you do is you have to get new money. You have to go to the visitor center to figure out where the youth hostels are or how to get around. You need a map, basically. You need to get this map. And it was like really hard, and sometimes you end up sleeping in a train station because it just worked out that way, or on a beach. I have a whole story about being stuck on this island, called Kos in Greece.
Okay.
Kos. And I just hopped on a random ferry and got from the island of Rhodes, and everybody was going to Eos, this party island, Eos.
Sure.
And I'm like, I don't want to do whatever. I want to do my own thing. And I'm not even going to look at the guidebook anymore, because by that time I was this experienced, So I hop on this this little boat, and I end up getting dropped off in this town on the opposite side of this fairly big island from the main city.
Yeah.
And this happened to be this like all-inclusive like honeymoon destination for Americans. And it was sort of a budget American honeymoon thing, and every single hotel was just that, hearts, and there was just me, and my budget was like $15 a day for everything.
Yeah.
And this was like $85 for each room. Every room on the whole town was $85. It was just they had this deal locked in, and all these honeymooners are there. And then I had to get out of that town, and then it turned out that the way to do it was the next ferry was a week away, and then there's a bus that goes across the island.
But it
was 5 days. So for 5 days, I had to sleep on the beach outside of this town. Very much a homeless person. I'd go into town, getting dirtier and dirtier with all these honeymooners.
Oh, wow.
And I'd be sitting on my little camp out beach with my tin of sardines. And then some honeymooning couple will walk by holding hands, just stumble upon me and then just jump back in fear.
Right.
And after a while, I started hissing at
He doesn't look Greek. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, my God. It was... It was terrible, and oh God! And the story went on and on. I had this long scraggly hair started getting greasy and gross, and in this just a moment of bad decision making, I decided to cut it all off using my Swiss Army knife scissors.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, and so I just had this patchy, weird head of hair, fine. Yeah, so. Anyway,
you slept 5 nights, and then you got on the ferry and you went back?
No, I hopped on a bus that took me to the city of Kos.
See?
And then the city had regular youth hostels, and then I checked in, and then I was back in the thing. But for some reason, I didn't go to a barber. I wasn't able to find a good barber or whatever, and so I'm walking around with patchy hair.
You just needed clippers, right? Just get rid of the rest of it.
I don't know why I didn't do that, but I was definitely not a hit on the beaches of the hookup scene.
But you were saving $15 a day by not staying $85 a night, because you didn't have that money either.
Yeah, that's true.
So really, you could have had the haircut, probably.
Yeah, I would go into town and then buy. Yeah, I could have. I really should have splurged on the haircut. Looking back, I would definitely tell my younger self, get the haircut. You'll like it.
So how long did it take for you to fall into the routine of pack it all up, new city? Because, we're talking about, getting up to 70 miles. I mean, you went from no travel or not doing what you were doing to, I'm going to go do this thing for an entire summer.
I got into London, and I was there with a friend of mine who was a more experienced traveler. And he was kind of leading us around. We hitchhiked. We stayed with people he had met before in Hull.
Okay.
No, Sheffield.
Oh,
and then
sure.
we went to Hull,
north,
and then we took a trip. Then we took a ferry to Rotterdam, and then took a bus to Amsterdam. Hung out in Amsterdam. Amsterdam is when I was starting to feel like I kind of wanted do my own thing.
A lot of Americans in Amsterdam, right?
Yeah, it was pretty easy. There was a lot of, stuff to do and stuff to see. And then we hitchhiked out of Amsterdam and got one ride that dropped us off in the middle of nowhere. And then nobody would pick us up. It was like, Dutch people in the countryside don't pick us up. So we ended up walking and walking. Finally, we did get a ride. Got dropped at a truck stop, and we're waiting at the truck stop to try to get a ride. And somebody had etched into the side of the back of a sign or something in this paint. It said, "Only assholes try to hitchhike here." And it was true. Nobody was going to stop. People were like jeer honking at us.
Oh, wow.
So we end up walking. There was no walking area. It was a freeway, essentially. Oh, yeah. And so we're walking, and then we're walking through like farmland. Dogs start chasing us. We're running through crops.
Yeah, that'll speed you up.
And we go, and at one point we had to go across this little river, this little ravine. And we'd have to took our backpacks off and then heave them across, and then jump across after. And it was ridiculous. We finally just found this little town. Of course, we didn't have GPS. We didn't have phones,
right. Yeah.
This little
like
town.
Phone days. Yeah.
And the town was a little university town. It was a little bigger. It was kind of charming. And we bought some beers and some water. We were running out of water. And we slept in a park. It was like, that was a long day. It was a hard day, but it was worth it now. It was really great. I was there with my buddy, Eric. And and then I fall asleep. And the next thing I know, I wake up because it's raining on us. And it's still dark out, not morning yet. And the rain is
it's cold.
Just drizzling, kind of like not like absolute drenching downpour, but it's just steady
enough
drenching rain. It's getting our sleeping bags wet. And we don't have tents. We just have light sleeping bags. And so we end up soaking wet, packing up. Dawn hits, and we find a train station, and we're like, fuck this hitchhiking bullshit.
Yeah.
No more. And then we went to Berlin, and that was pretty fun. And then we went to Prague.
Uh-huh.
And Prague was amazing. This is like very shortly after the Berlin Wall came down. And it was just newly, capitalist Western country, all these bars, all these young people.
Hope,
and,
right? That's like it
was like so cool.
A hope infusion for everybody there.
Oh, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And that's where I parted with my buddy, because it was like he was the crutch, because he knew how to do everything, and I wanted to be challenged because I felt like I knew how to do it now.
You learned enough.
Yeah, and so, but he was cool with it. He's like, okay, we'll meet up at Paris, which we did. 2.5 months later.
Yeah.
And, or 2 months later, probably. And so, I guess maybe 3 weeks, a month into the trip is when I started really wanting to sort of do it my own way. And I really leaned into doing it as cheap as possible, even cheaper than I needed to, as the Greece story told.
That's great. I mean, and, you didn't cave. You could have probably caved the last night after 5 nights. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
The math is close.
$85, yeah. I didn't cave. Oh, and by the way, last week we talked about the Barcelona football game.
Yeah.
I ended up in Barcelona after Greece.
Oh, man.
So I went to, as soon as I got to Barcelona, the first thing I did, went to a barber. And got
Spanish barber.
Got like a Curious George haircut.
Nice.
And then I was like ready to go.
Yeah, so that was the style, right?
That's the only style I had, and it was great. But then I spent, about a year traveling in Central America and Mexico, and that was all really kind of rough traveling too.
Did the Europe trip prep you for that?
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And it was just a progression.
Okay.
Obviously Mexico, especially Central America, is rougher.
Yeah.
Then you could definitely get in more trouble. I like that.
Fun, though.
I like that kind of traveling,
places.
And I want to do more of it.
Yeah.
But with more money, and not go full on resort.
Yeah.
But like a backpacking style, staying at a local B&B or something.
Yeah.
But, spend $50 a night.
Okay.
Not like 5.
Yeah.
Like,
go and do, exactly. 10 times the rate. That's great.
So, the challenge of it was what made it so cool. And shit, I know it's a little, I'm squeezing a lot out of it, but I got 2 books out of that traveling. And so
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I've got a one day kind of story. I grew up traveling a lot. And I'd been to Europe a couple of times by the time I graduated high school, and I started dating this wonderful woman from the University of Iowa, and I made my first trip to Spain where she was from, and I'm like, I've done this before. Post 9/11, it was I got a round trip ticket from Chicago to Madrid through Miami for $399. And that's
nice.
Still, and at the time, people were like, "Oh, was that a good deal?" I'm like, that was half of what it should have cost. Nobody was flying. And so I was like, I've done this before. I've been to Brussels. I've been to London. I know what to expect. And I got on the ground in Madrid, and I spoke very little Spanish. And at the airport,
¿Dónde está el baño?
Pretty much. Yeah. Like, if that. Or
just baño?
Baño, yeah. Like the rest of the words did not come together. And I landed in Madrid, and it was the old airport. And I was asking somebody because I on the ride in on the flight, somebody that was sitting behind me was like, "How are you going to get out to the bus station?" Because I got to going out to Valencia. And I was like, "Oh, I'm going to take a cab." He goes, "Oh, you can't do that. They're going to drive you around the city twice. You definitely that's no good."
I know that game.
And he's like, that's going to be
big
like
scammers, man.
Oh, yeah.
This all over. Yeah.
And at the time, he's like, that's going to be €20. And I was like, oh yeah, no, I don't want to do that. I'm senior in college, and I was like, no, I only have a couple €100 for a couple weeks, and we're going to go do stuff when we're there. So I got to skip that. So he goes, what you want to do is take the metro, and there's a metro stop at the Madrid at the airport. I was like, oh, okay, that's perfect. So I go over to where that's supposed to be, and it's closed because it's under construction.
Yeah, man. Welcome to Spain, I guess.
And they go, and I'm trying to ask in Spanish, and the woman looks at me and goes, in English? And I go, yeah. Oh, hey, this is great. Just like everywhere else in Europe, everybody speaks English. And she goes, outside there's a bus. It's a red bus. You're going to walk out. You're going to get on that. You're going to get off at this stop. And I'm not really, I'm on an overnight flight. I'm not really paying attention. And I step outside of the airport, and I see the red bus. Like, there it is. And I start to step off the curb, and the bus driver honks at me and then, gives me the finger wag, as they do in Spain.
I know that finger wag, yeah.
And I was like, And I start to move, and he does it again. And this woman is behind me, and she goes, he wants you to stop. He's gonna pull the bus up. I was like, oh, okay. So I wait, and 30 seconds later, the guy's driving the bus over, and she gets on the bus with me, and there's only a few other people that get on, and all of a sudden we're going, and we get to the first stop, which I think is where I'm supposed to get out, and I start to grab my stuff. The door opens. I'm getting my stuff in my hands. The door closes, and the guy drives away. And now I have no idea where I'm going.
Holy shit.
Yes. And
wait, your stuff is in there.
My stuff's there. No, yeah. I'm on the bus. My stuff's there. And I'm like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, wait, there's this woman over here who definitely speaks English.
Yeah.
I'm going to wait with her. Yeah. When she gets off, I'll get off at whatever, because I didn't see a metro stop anywhere. So I just waited.
Yeah.
And eventually, we make several more stops, and I never paid anybody. Like, this was a free bus ride because the metro was closed. She eventually starts to gather. I'm like, okay, I'm following. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get off.
She turns around, pepper sprays you, right?
No. Fortunately, I get off and I look, and there is a metro stop. So I go down there, and I'm like, I know kind of where I'm going.
Yeah.
And the other thing the guy on the plane had warned me about was watch your wallet on the metro.
Yeah.
And so I am standing in the corner with the backwards baseball cap on, gritting my teeth, like growling practically. People think I am an absolute crazy person.
Wow.
I got my bags. I'm holding on to everything, and eventually we end up at where we're supposed to, where I'm supposed to go. I go up the elevator, and there's a newsstand. I'm not seeing the bus station anywhere. And I ask them in Spanish if they speak any English. They're like, no. And I go, okay.
Where is the busso?
Pretty much is what I came out with. And they, they understood the bus, and they pointed down the street. So I went the wrong way. As I'm going in, I get surrounded by a group of gypsies that are trying to sell me rosemary.
Yeah. And then going through your pockets while you're...
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. Leave me alone. I'm going inside.
God.
I buy a bus ticket.
Classic.
For 11 o'clock. I was very clear which bus ticket I wanted. It was 11. And I go downstairs at 11, and this is in the morning, and I see that there's my bus to Valencia. It's 11 o'clock. I go to get on. These two, the driver and somebody are talking as I get on the bus, and I get on, and I just sit down in a seat, right in the front. And the bus driver comes on, and I understand he's saying somebody is on the wrong bus.
Oh, boy.
And I don't know really what he's saying, but and I'm in the front row, and he starts checking tickets for everybody on the bus.
Oh, God.
Except for me. And I look at my ticket, and I notice that there is an assigned seat, which I'm clearly not sitting in.
Yeah.
And I just put that sucker right back in my pocket. Yeah. And he came up to me, and he's like, you, give me, hey, you, where's your ticket? And I showed it to me. He goes, why didn't you say anything? You got to get off the bus. So I get off. I had a ticket for 11 o'clock that night.
Yeah.
And they go, it's the other guy that he was talking to. They're like, you want to go to Valencia? Yes, I want to go to Valencia. You want to go to Valencia now? Yes, I want to go now. They use a Sharpie. They cross something out. They write the time on it. I get on the bus.
A different bus.
The same bus. The 11. That one. He let me sit there. Now the guy was glaring at me the entire ride.
Yeah.
And along the way, something, and to this day, I still don't know what, there was some interaction with a car where people are standing up and they're looking and they're like, oh my God, no, I can't, and I'm sitting there and they're trying to tell me what's going on. And I go, I finally was like,
I just missed it.
I don't have any idea. Happened. And a woman just goes, pobrecito, like poor guy.
Yeah, totally. He's a little slow.
Yeah, and I get off the bus in Valencia, and I'm like, okay, I'm here. Girlfriend's gonna come and get me. We should come with a friend. This is gonna be really easy. And all of a sudden, I hear somebody screaming, "Once!" What? Like, what is this guy? And he's blind. He's walking around screaming at the top of his lungs, "Once!" And people are like moving around him. They're leaving him alone. He was selling lottery tickets for the blind lottery in Spain. And it was the single weirdest, you thought 8 hours of my life.
Like, had deeper significance than that.
Yeah. They're like, oh, it was just an Once guy, and that's the weirdest thing I've ever, like, when they showed up, they were like, yeah, that was really weird. I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's my entire day. That's been everything I've lived through today. And they took me right out to a bar immediately after. Yeah. Good friends are for, Oh, yeah. I ended up marrying that girl, fortunately.
Yeah, I knew that was going to be the story when you said I met this. Because if it wasn't eventually becoming your wife, you probably would have hedged a little more if it was some ex-girlfriend that... Oh, she was so hot. Like the hottest.
She was amazing.
Hottest girl I've ever had. Everything's been downhill since, but
that's
we settle.
Also true. Yeah. It was one of those, like, I'll never forget it. And now I felt very foreign. And that was 22 years ago. And I'm like, I consider myself part Spanish. Like, I get it. I understand the language. I can talk to people. I know when something's going on, or when somebody's talking about me, or when Spain won the World Cup, I couldn't believe it. And I celebrated like everybody else. But that was a very long trip of sorts to get to that point. It was a lot of fun. Anyway.
No, I get it.
Well,
that's a wonderful place to stop for now.
I think so.
I wonder if maybe we should just continue this next episode. I feel like I've got more travel stories.
I love
we
the
could just call it travel stories. And I had some bullet points here about the Stoics, the Stoic tradition, about how, and other stuff. But I don't think we
put
need
a pin
to go
in this
there
one
right
at this
now.
point.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's fun.
So cheers.
Cheers.
Good talking to you.
Thanks.
And thanks everybody for listening. Let's see how this music sound, if it's coming up. Oh, there it is. Yeah. All right. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Oh my God.